MAGA, pro-black imposters, and Russian bots are at it again. They are spreading serious disinformation about Vice President Harris. I will dispel 4 of those lies in this video. Stay with me. Hello, everybody. I'm attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. And each and every week, we bring you at least one legal analysis of some trending story regarding politics, policies, personalities, or pop culture to empower you with the information you need to defy this unjust legal system and to nullify systemic racism. If that interests you, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell so you'll get notification every time we upload one of these powerful and informative videos. Thank you for staying with me. Hey everyone, I am attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. Recently, I took a look at our analytics and I noticed something shocking. Many of you watch our videos and I believe you enjoy them, but you haven't subscribed yet. What are you waiting for? Again, I was shocked because I know our content is empowering and informative. Plus, our 2024 goal is to have 150,000 subscribers before the end of the year. Please help us by hitting that subscribe button, especially you young folks. We particularly want to increase our number of young subscribers. Thanks for all your continued support. We appreciate it very much. Now, it is reported that Vice President Harris has gained enough delegates to become the presumptive Democratic nominee. When the Democrats officially nominate her later this month, she will be the first black woman to secure this position and hold this distinction. She stands on the shoulders of the late, great Representative Shirley Chisholm of Brooklyn, New York. Representative Chisholm made history as the first African-American woman elected to Congress in 1968. In 1972, she broke new ground by becoming the first woman and African-American to run for the presidential nomination of a major political party here in the United States. However, Vice President Harris stands on the shoulders of other greats as well in this fight for black equality, such as Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Dr. King, John Lewis, Fannie Lou Hamer, and so on. Although I'm not a Democrat and I don't agree with some of Vice President Harris's positions, I celebrate this history-making milestone with others. What's more, I'm going to work hard to get her elected, as I did with President Obama, although I did not agree with all his positions either. Quite frankly, I've never voted for any candidate that I agreed with totally, so that really doesn't make any difference. In this instance, the choice for president couldn't be more clearer. If you favor democracy, civil rights, and character-based leadership, this is not complicated. Either Trump or Vice President Harris will become our next president. No third-party candidate will win. In fact, voting for a third-party candidate will help Trump win. Now, that's just the facts. And I say this about third-party candidates with some sorrow because, like most people, I really like Dr. Cornel West. Still, the consequences can be so severe if Trump is elected. I cannot vote for Dr. West and don't recommend that you do either, as well as Robert Kennedy Jr. Meanwhile, the forces aligned against Kamala are weird. What do I mean by that? Well, what's the old saying? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. That describes this coalition of some black men and women with right-wing white supremacists like Trump and MAGA. I hope between now and the election, African Americans will unite around Kamala and reject the disinformation that MAGA, Russian bots, and those pro-black imposters are disseminating. Another Trump election will, at a minimum, mean the furthering of the anti-black Project 2025 policies on top of the damage that Trump and MAGA did to black Americans in the first term. At worst, a Trump victory could be our last election or the establishment of Trump as an authoritarian like Maduro in Venezuela. In fact, I got a video planned where I'm going to show you the comparisons between Maduro and Trump. Hence, in this video, I want to dispel some of the disinformation these groups are spreading against Kamala. All right, so let's go to another screen and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Before we get started, let me define for you what disinformation is. According to the American Psychological Association, misinformation is false or inaccurate information getting the facts wrong. Disinformation is something completely different. It is false information which is deliberately intended to mislead, intentionally misstating the facts. That's what's happening to Vice President Kamala Harris. There are those forces out there who are spreading disinformation, and they show up on my channel like they do others who are standing strong for Kamala Harris. And you kind of know them when you see them. There's certain things that they say which tips you off that this is either a bot or one of those pro-black imposters from some of these other YouTube channels. So that's the difference between misinformation and disinformation. Now, in a 2020 interview between Vice President Harris and Charlemagne, she expressed her support for reparations. But these pro-black imposters says that she doesn't express support for reparations. This is the first bit of disinformation that I must refute. Kamala Harris expressed support for reparations, flat out. Now, I'm not going to play the video because I don't want to get a copyright strike from iHeart. So what I did is even better. I have the transcript, and we're going to look at the actual transcript so that we'll see every word that she said. All right, so Charlemagne said, "Where do you stand on some form of reparations for black people?" Because you see Mayor de Blasio saying, the marijuana economy would be a form of reparations. Marianne Williamson says, black people should get $100 billion in slavery reparations. Like, where do you stand on it? And here's Vice President Harris's answer to that question. She says, well, look, I think that we have got to address that. Again, it's back to the inequities therethrough. Look, America has a history of 200 years of slavery. We had Jim Crow. We had legal segregation in America for a very long time. The Voting Rights Act was only strong for 50 years, and then they wiped it out with this United States Supreme Court and the Shelby decision. Vice President Harris continues. She says, to the point that 22 states immediately thereafter put in place laws that one court found were crafted with surgical precision to have black people not be able to vote. So we've got to recognize, back to that earlier point, people aren't starting out on the same base in terms of their ability to succeed. And so we have got to recognize that and give people a lift up. And there are a number of ways to do it. Part of my initiative, again, around the LIFT Act is that at some point, lifting people up who are making less than $100,000 a year. What I want to do about rent is the same thing. What we need to do around education and understanding disparities, what we need to do around HBCUs. She continues, but we have a history of racism in America. And then Charlemagne says, so you are for some type, yes, I am. Charlemagne says, reparation, okay? And Vice President Harris says again, yes, I am. So Charlemagne says, so you are for some type of reparations. She says, yes, I am, twice. Now go look at the video for yourself. Because when these people say that Vice President Harris did not express support for reparations, they are lying. There is proof that they are lying. She said with her own lips, in front of millions of people, that she supports some form of reparations. So I refuted that disinformation, that she does not support reparations. She said out of her own mouth that she does. All right, second thing. So here, folks have said, and some have commented on my channel, that Vice President Harris said she would not do anything specifically or only for blacks. Well, she did say that, but let's get the context. The context is critical. And I'm going to explain to you that when she said that, folks took her completely out of context and they ran away with what she said, and then that became disinformation. Now, let me show you. So the Griot interviewer asked, do you support reparations for black people? So once again, Vice President Harris gives a long answer, and she needed to. She says, well, listen, again, we had over 200 years of slavery. We had Jim Crow for almost a century. We had legalized discrimination, segregation, and now we have segregation and discrimination that is not legal, but still exists. And as a barrier to progress, we have disparities around housing. So she actually lays out the case for reparations. That's the first thing she does. She lays out a legal, historical, political argument. Why? Well, I'll go into that in just a moment. She goes on to say, we have disparities around education. We have disparities around income. And we have to recognize that everybody did not start out on an equal footing in this country. And in particular, black people have not. And so we have got to recognize that and do something about that and give folks a lift up. That's why, for example, I'm proposing the LIFT Act. Give people who are making $100,000 or less as a family a tax credit, which will benefit and uplift 60% of black families who are in poverty. So by default, it affects black families. And then the interviewer says, but there's not a particular policy for African Americans that you would explore? And Vice President Harris says, but no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they are not starting at the same place and they are not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit black children, black families, black homeowners, because the disparities are so significant. So if we focus on the specific issues that have resulted in the greatest disparities, and we understand that that's part of why we're doing it, listen, the reality also is this: any policy that will benefit black people will benefit all society. Let's be clear about that. Let's really be clear about that. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No, because whatever benefits that black family will benefit that community and society as a whole in the country, right? Now, let's look at why she answered that question that way, because it was a smart answer. So, she answered that question that way for three reasons: for cultural reasons, for political reasons, and for legal reasons. Let me explain. So, had she said, yes, I'm specifically going to do this or that for black people, it would have been culturally unpopular. What do I mean? Well, white culture, the dominant culture, would have revolted and pressured their representatives to oppose any government measure that expressly favor one race, particularly the black race. So culturally, especially in this climate, in this MAGA climate, whites would have had hissy fits to hear someone who is vying to be the president say that she is going to do something specifically for black Americans. Kamala knows that if she says that, that's just going to create some backwind that's going to make it more difficult for her to do anything for black people. So she smartly said, no, I'm not doing it that way. What she said is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to target these areas where black people are disproportionately harmed and affected. And if we do something to fix those areas, then by default, as she said, blacks will benefit the most without us having to create this hailstorm of white revolt, which would probably prevent it from happening anyway. Now, why would a white revolt prevent it from happening? Well, for this reason. Let's go back to the screen. Because it would have been politically foolish for her to say, I'm going to do this or that for black people specifically. What do I mean? Well, any agenda that expressly favors one race or some other race, but especially blacks, will not get bipartisan support. And you got to have bipartisan support unless you have a supermajority. And that's sort of left up to us whether or not we vote for Kamala in such a way that not only is she elected, but she goes into power with a supermajority. That is, with 60 Democratic senators and an overwhelming majority in the House. If she does not go into office with those numbers, then she will need bipartisan support in Congress. And that's because, as I've explained, it is Congress who passed the laws. Vice President Harris will not become Queen Harris and just by edict say this or that. Of course, she can do executive orders, but executive orders don't have as much power and authority as laws that Congress pass and that she signs into law. So she just can't say, I'm Queen of the United States of America and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. No, she has to run it through Congress. And if she doesn't have that super majority that I just explained to you, then she's going to need bipartisan support. So let's go back to what I said. If she had said, yes, I plan to do this specifically for black people, there would have been white revolt that would have reverberated in Congress with those white senators and white representatives. And they would have said, this is not going to happen unless, again, Kamala gets a supermajority in Congress. But without that, if she says the wrong things, she is going to create a hailstorm against what she's trying to accomplish. So she was smart to say, no, I'm not going to specifically say that this or that is for blacks only. And I'm going to explain to you, legally, she can't do that either. Now that brings me to the third thing. If the government tries to do something for one race or another, then that measure is going to be strictly scrutinized. Now, let me explain to you what I mean. So let's say that Kamala Harris wins the presidency and she has this black agenda that she wants to apply to black people. Well, what's going to happen? Well, again, there's going to be that white revolt. And then there's going to be that political revolt in Congress. But let's just say for a minute, Congress, for whatever reason, went along with this black agenda, which we know will not happen. But just assume that it does so that I can explain to you what would happen. So it goes through Congress, Congress passes it, and President Kamala Harris signs it into law. So as soon as the government tries to implement the agenda, what's going to happen? Some white group out there, some white law firm is going to sue the government and allege reverse discrimination. Now, where's that case going to end up ultimately? In front of the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, because this is the federal government, the 14th Amendment would not apply in this instance. It would be the due process clause of the 5th Amendment that basically says that the government cannot discriminate on the basis of race unless the government can prove that the discrimination is to further some sort of compelling interest and that whatever she wants to do is so narrowly tailored that, again, it won't discriminate against others unjustly. And remember how many conservatives are on the court? 6 out of 9. They are MAGA members. They strongly support Trump. They despise and hate any kind of racial classification. They have said many times, in their view, the Constitution is colorblind. They have upheld reverse discrimination lawsuits in the past, most especially affirmative action. So just think about it. If that court struck down affirmative action, can you imagine what that court will do with some sort of black agenda? Whereas Vice President Harris can possibly get around strict scrutiny and lawsuits and all of that if what she does applies to everybody, but she does it in areas where blacks are disproportionately harmed. I mean, that is a smart approach. That is a smart legal approach, a smart political approach. It is a smart cultural approach. Even then, it will be hard to implement it, but at least you don't raise those barriers, those legal, political, and cultural barriers as strongly as if you said, this is just for black people. That's not going to work in our country. If a state did that, that would be a violation of the 14th Amendment, equal protection, period, unless the state could prove that it had a compelling state interest for doing so. And the same is required for the federal government, which Kamala Harris would be over. She would have to show some compelling interest and that the law was very narrowly tailored so as not to infringe upon other people. That is a very high standard, especially for 6 conservatives. It probably would not pass muster. So again, Kamala very wisely said the best way to approach this is to target those areas where blacks are disproportionately impacted, like education, income, criminal justice, and fix those areas and apply the fix to all races of people. And in so doing, it's going to benefit blacks mostly. So she said what she had to say in order for her black agenda to become law. She couldn't do it any other way. The same was true with Barack Obama. There were certain limitations legally, politically, and culturally that Obama was living with. He could not get around them. Those limitations will be there with Kamala as well. Things can be done. We can get things done, but we got to do so smartly. And see, these pro-black imposters just say, well, she's not interested in reparations. We already disproved that. She did not want to go on the record as saying she would do something specifically for blacks. Well, now you understand why. That doesn't mean she doesn't want to do anything for blacks, but she is a lawyer, and me as a lawyer, and all the other lawyers out there and judges know that there are certain legal limitations and things got to be done in a certain way. So it can be done, but it has to be done smartly. It got to be done in a way that doesn't cause cultural, political, and legal barriers to all of a sudden be erected simply because you said this is specifically for black people. So that is the second bit of disinformation that I just refuted. She is on the record supporting reparations, number one. Number two, she did say that she would do everything that she could to help black people, but she knows that there are political, legal, and cultural limitations such that she has to do it in a certain way. She laid out why such an agenda is necessary. I mean, she literally laid it out. But she could not say, yes, I'm going to name this the Black Agenda Act, because she knows that Congress would say, no, that's dead on arrival. That's not going to happen. But if it's something, as Barack Obama says, that lifts all boats, you know, a tide that lifts all boats, then there's an easier chance of getting that passed, like the Affordable Care Act, which now insures about 4 million African-American people. And African-American people deal with healthcare disparities, principally not having healthcare insurance. So Obama did a big solid to black Americans by passing the Affordable Care Act, but he couldn't say this is for black Americans. No, he had to say this is for everybody. All right? Now, let's look at a couple other things. Is Kamala an American citizen? There's all kind of crazy stuff out there about her not being an American citizen. Let's put it to rest. Yes, she is an American citizen because she was born in Oakland, California. This garbage about birthright citizenship, this garbage about her parents were immigrants, therefore she's not a citizen, is hogwash. It is hogwash. The 14th Amendment tells us precisely who and who are not citizens, and she meets the requirements. It says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States, Kamala was born in Oakland, California, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Kamala is an American citizen simply because she was born here. All a person needs to be is born in America. Now, while I'm on that point, I need to say this. I have an upcoming video where I'm going to talk about how MAGA is trying to do away with that particular provision of the 14th Amendment. We got to fight that. We got to fight that. We can't let them mess with the 14th Amendment under no circumstances. Because if they're able to get rid of this language, let's go back. If they're able to get rid of this language, all persons born in the United States are citizens of the United States. If they're able to get rid of that, not only would that make some of the folks in the country automatic non-citizens, that could also apply to us, making us non-citizens just that fast. Just that easy. Because remember, the 14th Amendment was added to the Constitution specifically for us, to make us citizens. Again, to undo the Dred Scott opinion. So we cannot let them do anything to the 14th Amendment, period. I'll be dealing with that in an upcoming video. So is she a citizen? The question is, was she born here? Yes, she was. Then that makes her a citizen. Is Kamala Black? Yes. Her mother was Indian and her father is a Black American of Afro-Jamaican descent. Her mother immigrated here from India and her father immigrated here from Jamaica. And because he's Black, Kamala is Black. And she's Indian, but she's Black. And we know Donald Trump tried to make an issue out of the fact that she is a biracial person.
I just defined it, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a Black woman?
Well, I can say no. I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much. And she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was Black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn Black, and now she wants to be known as Black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she Black?
She is always identified as a Black woman. She went to a historically Black college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a Black person.
Just to be clear,
he says that she all of a sudden turned Black. What does that foolishness mean? That is pure foolishness. Look, I did my DNA. I have about 15% of European blood in me. I didn't turn Black one day of my life. I don't go back and forth like, well, part of me is European and the other part of me is Black. I've been Black all my life. I didn't turn Black because I got some other kind of blood in me. I am a Black man. I'm an African American. I am a Black person, period. I don't turn that off and turn that on. Of course, there's this thing, this notion of code switching and so on, where you talk one way to try to fit in with some group or something. But that doesn't mean you're no longer Black. You're still Black. Donald Trump's talking foolishness like he did with Obama. That's just more birtherism. Like Kamala said, that's just that same old show. That's all that is. We're not going to play that game with him. She is a Black woman. She went to Black churches. She studied at an HBCU. She is Black. Her father is Black. Now, let me show you this as well. And this should put all this foolishness to bed. Here's Kamala's family in Jamaica. All of those people are Black people. All of them. Those are some of her cousins. Though the woman in the red dress standing beside her there, that is her grandmother. Standing to the other side of her is her great-grandmother. And to the other side, where Kamala's sitting in that lady's lap, that is another great-grandmother. And then her father over there, a professor, you see he's obviously Black. These are Black people. Kamala is Black. And she's Asian. She's Indian. But she identifies as Black. And many of you out there, you are mixed, you're biracial, triracial, etc., but you identify as a black person. So stop this. Here is the proof. Her father's black, her grandmother, her great-grandmothers, her cousins, her daddy are black. That makes Kamala black. What more does the woman have to do? She said on The Breakfast Club back in that 2020 interview where she affirmed that she definitely supports some sort of reparation. She said that she's not going to spend her time explaining to people what it means to be black. I agree. I agree. But I just took the time to explain it to you. The woman is black. Her family on her father's side are black people. Come on, folks. Let's stop being foolish and following behind these MAGA people, doing their work for them, doing their dirty work. Kamala's a black woman. She would be the first black female president in American history. And trust me when I tell you, there are forces out there that will do everything possible to prevent that from happening. We got to do everything possible to make that happen. Now, I'm going to do another video in a few days about Kamala's prosecutorial history. I'm reading her books now so that I can give you some accurate information, not half-truths, not disinformation, but full, truthful information about her time as the District Attorney of San Francisco and the Attorney General of California. All right. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for staying throughout this video. So many times folks will watch for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and don't get all that they need to get in order to have a full understanding. Thank you for not being that type of person. I am Attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. This is what we bring you on a consistent basis. Thank you for tuning in, and peace until the next time.